So I just got back from doing the Milford track about an hour ago, and I just wanted to make this video just to kind of remember just the feeling that I have right now of completing this hike. Like, this whole thing was amazing. I've never done multi-night, multi-day hiking consecutively, not like this. So I was nervous. I didn't know what to bring. I didn't know how much food to pack, that kind of thing. And so, like, leading up to this thing, I was super nervous. I was so lucky to have been able to book these huts to stay in, like the different huts throughout the trip. It was just like kind of a spur of the moment kind of thing. Looked on their website at the availability, and like the first 3 days of my annual leave, they had these huts available, and I'm like, this is a sign. I need to book this. I'm doing it. So I did, and then just like that was maybe a month and a half ago that I booked it, and then just leading up to today, just the anxiety just slowly builds more and more and more. Just like, fuck, am I prepared? Like all that kind of shit that you're running through your head. And so I didn't know what to bring. I didn't know how much food to bring. And so I went down to, like, I bought a shitload of clothes for this hike, and then bought a shitload of food for eating. And yeah, it was like, in the end, I probably could have survived for another, like, maybe 3 or 4 days. Like, I brought way too much food, probably double the food that I needed to survive this thing. It's 4 days, 3 nights, and you have 2 meals a day with some power food. Should be able to be fine, but I probably could have made it a couple more days. So like the day before starting the hike, stayed at a lodge in Tiano, close to like where you catch the ferry to begin kind of the walk. I think it's called like the Divide. And so I had my GoPro, I had my phone with me, and so I'm like I'm charging it just to be prepared for the next day. But then my phone decides to fry itself, and it won't charge, which is no good. So I'm like, well, that fucking sucks. This is fucking useless now. But at least I had the GoPro, but I had to use it sparingly to take photos and videos like throughout the trip. So I'd only take photos kind of like here and there when you come to a nice spot or you're having a good moment, that kind of thing. And so the morning of the first day, walk down to where you catch the ferry. It's like 500 meters from where we're staying at the lodge. And there was like these three, there was quite a few people who are already there that were also doing the hike. There was 3 girls from Brisbane, an American girl with her brother and her friend, and then just slowly we all just kind of like started getting on the boat. And so I was chatting with them all, chatted with the American girl, and once the boat finally left, like half an hour later, there's probably another like 20 people on the boat. And like as the boat was going across, maybe like an hour kind of ferry ride, was chatting with that American girl and then this Dutch girl who was just doing like a 1-day hike of the Milford track. She's only doing like a quick little trip. And then it was a beautiful ride going across, and then once we reached the other side, before you start the hike, they just wanted us to step and wash our boots, kind of in just some like kind of soap to just get the bacteria off our boots so that you're not bringing shit into the park. And so after doing that, picked up my shit and then was walking and chatting with that American girl. And so we kept going quite a bit further, and then I could hear these 2 guys coming up behind us who sounded like they were moving pretty quickly. So I'm like, oh yeah, if you guys want to go ahead of us, sounds like you're moving fast. And they're like, oh no. So I'm like, all right, well, if you're happy going at our pace, then you're more than welcome to join us. My name's Graham, blah blah. Nice to meet you. There's 2 boys from Israel, really nice guys, and so then they were walking with us, and then so basically over the next 4 days, 3 nights, like this was kind of like our group that like whenever we'd stay at like the different huts, we'd try to stay together in the same room and hang out and do our walks together. And so the first day was like a really short walk. It was only an hour and a half from the ferry to the first hut. and it was mostly just like a flat walk. Like the whole 4 days, you're walking through like mostly beach forest, and then at times climbing up mountains. Um, but it was super green in the forest. Like there's so much, as they call like dwarves beard, just like growing off all the branches. It's super healthy in there. Air was so clear. So it was very green walking through there, which was pretty cool. Um, and it was a really nice walk. A couple suspension bridges. You're walking beside rivers, big rapids. Water was really clear. And then eventually, once we got to the hut, we put our shit inside and just kind of looked around. And then we're like, yeah, we should go for a swim. So we go down to a nearby spot to kind of head down into the water. And the water, it's all from fucking glaciers. It was fucking freezing. So we just kind of like, we were looking for a spot deep enough for us to like actually swim in. And so we just like kind of walked up to our knees, kind of in some water, but it's fucking freezing. Came to a spot where the water was like a little bit warmer, but then where you wanted to jump in where it was deeper, where it got fucking cold again, but we all did it. And we were hanging around there for a while, and then we saw those 3 girls from Brisbane came by, and they were wondering how to get down there, so we showed them, and they put their feet in the water, and it was too cold for them. And so after a while, we eventually went back, dried off, and then went back to the hut. And then at each hut, there's a ranger at each of the huts, and they'll do like a hut talk, just like later in the night, just to let you know, like, how to expect the weather to be, over your next couple days, what the conditions are like, that kind of stuff. All the rangers were really cool, really friendly people. And at the first hut that we stayed at, the ranger took us on just like a nature walk, just not too far, but like kind of, near and around the hut, just to show us the different type of like vegetation. And probably, I don't know, 95% of the things that she pointed out, you're like, you can make a tea from this. And she's like, this flower, if you have diarrhea, it's really good to help you with your diarrhea. And so the 2 Israeli boys that I'd met, every time the ranger told us something new, they looked at me and they're like, write it down. I did have a pen and paper with me. I didn't ever actually write it down, but every time they look at me and be like, something new, write it down. I'm like, okay. And then she took us down a path close to kind of where we went in the river for the swim. And she's like, yeah, later tonight, there will be some glowworms. So after that nature walk kind of finished, we went down to the river, had a safety joint meeting, spent some time skipping rocks and just chatting. And then as it got a little bit darker, we then went to go check out the glowworms, which were really cool. It was just, they were all kind of like hanging under like the overhang rocks, and then in the decapitating trees and things like that. And there was at least 100 of them, and like it looked like little like galaxies, just little like bright lights just everywhere. And so that was really cool. We hung out there for maybe like 10 minutes or so, and even before, backtrack just a little bit, like before the ranger talk, like I'd brought a deck of cards. So we played a game that was introduced to the Israeli boys by a Russian person that they met. Basically, it's a bingo game, and so you need like, you're on a team, and you have to sit kind of like across from your teammate, and basically the game is you have to get 4 cards to be the exact same, like 3 of hearts, 3 of diamonds, 3 of clubs, 3 of spades, that kind of thing. And when you have that, your partner has to yell out bingo, but you can't tell them that you have those 4 cards. So the game is to have signals to, show them like, hey, like I have the cards, say bingo. And so the Israeli boys, we had a hard time, me and the American girl had a hard time figuring out like what their signal was. Like they were really good at it, but then she and I came up with some signals to do, which really confused the Israeli boys, which worked well for us because then we started winning a lot. That was a fun game. And then so yeah. After the glowworms began, I went back to the hut, reading a little bit, and then kind of went to sleep. And then every morning I'd be waking up at 6:30. It's just when I set my alarm for. And yeah, every day they're like, man, like, why the fuck are you getting up so early? And I'm just like, I don't know. It just seems like a good time to wake up. And it was like early, but you know, you're kind of the first one up before everyone else wakes up, and they generally be up at like 7 o'clock. And so the ranger, like, you know, when you're checking out of the hut, they ask you just to like flip your mattress just up on the bed, just so that, you know, they know somebody's left. But I just went into the kitchen hall to make some breakfast and just kind of pack and that kind of thing. And so the two Israeli boys and the American girl, they thought I had left because they just saw my bunk was empty. But then they came into the kitchen hall and they're like, "Oh, you're here," and I'm like, "Yeah, like, I mean, I'm not going anywhere without you guys, obviously." But I just, once I'm awake, I can't go back to sleep, so I'm like, I'm just gonna, you know, go make breakfast, that kind of thing. And so we all had breakfast, and then we started our next, you know, the next day. That was day one. This is day two. So we start heading to the second hut. I think it was a 6-hour walk there. Kind of flat, a little bit of some uphill, walking through some forests, walking through some like big crossings, and like you're in the sun, and like the entire time for this whole trip, the 4 days and 3 nights, I think we had rain on one of those nights. Like, we had amazing weather through the whole trip, and like I was not expecting this. So like when the sun was out, it was fucking hot. And you know, along the walk, like there were points where there was like lakes, just little like side tracks that you could go check out. And so we found one lake, spent a bit of time there taking photos of there were so many waterfalls coming off like the different types, like the mountains there were just insane. Like they're super tall. There's so many waterfalls coming off of them that it looked like something out of Avatar. And so, you know, we kept walking. This is maybe like 3 hours after we started. We came across one lake. I think it was called Private Lake. And then the Israeli boy, Rafik, and the American girl, Alana, had this game, what are the odds? And so you pick a number, any number, and he's like, what are the odds that you'll go in this lake for a swim? He's like, 1 in 2. And so if they say the same number, then he has to do it. And then I think the number was 2, so they both said 2. Like, you go 3, 2, 1, and then they have to say the number. And so they both said the same number, and then he had to go for a swim. And I was like, you know what, man, like, it's fucking hot out. I'm gonna come in too. Went in for a swim. The water was beautiful. Like, it wasn't as cold as like the river where we had swam, you know, the day before. It was a really nice spot just to kind of go for a swim. And then there was this big waterfall coming all the way down to the lake where we were swimming. So got a bit colder as you went closer to the waterfall, but it was a beautiful spot. Like, there was a nice rock to just kind of dry off on and hang out on. And if you look back the direction, like where we came, all you see is just like these mountain ranges just on all sides, and then there's just a big opening at the end, like nothing in the end, just the mountains on the side. And then you had blue sky, couple clouds, but it was just this big open like area. It was so beautiful. And so we probably hung out there for like half an hour, and after that, you know, we then, you know, kept going on the hike. And you know, we'd pass a few people who were also like, you know, who'd be staying in the same huts that we'd be staying at, and you know, having a chat with them. And it felt like a long day. I mean, 6 hours was like, it's a long time to walk when you're carrying like a shitload of equipment on your back. And like you're always, you know, you constantly get thirsty, but like it really helped to, I had like kind of the hiking poles, and like those definitely made a difference at all times, going uphill on just even flat ground and going downhill, that kind of thing. So I'm glad to have had those. And so eventually we made it to the hut. We were pretty tired by that point. I think some of the people had, you know, decided to take a nap. And then I think we went to go find somewhere else to swim. And then after that, like, we just kind of did our own thing for a little bit. I was just reading in the bed. Um, and there was a helipad just beside the hut where we were staying. So we just even kind of chilled out there. It was right in the sun, which was perfect. You could hear all the birds. You could hear a few kias. Um, and then the Israeli boys were like, "Hey, we want to teach you how to cook something." And we're like, "Oh, okay, cool." So they taught us how to kind of like grill tuna that comes in a can. And they learned this from their army days, which wasn't all that long ago. So you take off the lid from the tuna can, put like a couple squares of toilet paper over top, and then just kind of light the corners. And then so that burns the toilet paper, but then it kind of cooks the tuna that was like on top of the can. It kind of cooks the stuff a little bit below it. But you do that for like 15-20 minutes, and like it makes your tuna so much tastier. So it's like it would be good to mix with like pasta or rice or whatever you want to cook it with. So I'm glad they showed me that, because like I'll definitely be doing that, because I don't like the taste of just tuna straight from the can. So that was really cool to learn that. They'd be teaching us like a few words in Hebrew as well, so learned how to. I'm always curious in other languages how to say, cheers. So in Hebrew it's l'chaim. They taught me how to say water, which is mime. Bro, I think is kapella. There's a few other words that they taught me too. They always asked me about that. They'd quiz me on that and be like, what's this word? What's this word? And then they'd quiz me on things the ranger would say, which was like, if the rock is green, it's slippery, don't walk on it. If the rock is gray, it's safe. Don't drink the brown water, obviously. You can drink the flowing water. So they'd be like, brown, and I'm like, don't drink it. Green, slippery. Gray, safe. And then they're like, A+ for you, you're going to go to university. And I'm like, yes. And so yeah, we hung out on the helipad for a little bit. And like we were kind of being attacked by sandflies as well, but I brought like a big spray can of DEET, which helped out so much. So that really helped to kind of keep the sandflies away from you, so you could sit outside and read your book or just hang out and that kind of thing. And so eventually, we made dinner later on. Had the hut talk with the ranger, who was also really cool. And then I think we went down to the second helipad, which was like a bit further, just kind of along the main trail, which we would have came off of. Had another safety joint meeting and just